I don't know. It just told me that it couldn't go live. Are we live?
Yeah, it looked like it. I'll check on the good old LinkedIn, but I think so.
Okay. Well, we know we have a little delay there, but we'll give it a little check. But for now, we'll just assume and we're live. But we did get a little bit of an adventuresome thing there. I'll pull up the YouTube and make sure that that is working as well. But welcome to our weekly office hours, Ask Us Anything format. And you know how it do. We are here for you, for your questions, for whatever you've got going on. And, if you have thoughts, concerns, questions, antagonistic jokes, insults, whatever it is that you want to hurl our direction, hurl them our way. But this is our weekly AMA format, our weekly Ask Us Anything format. And yeah, this did not go live on YouTube.
Well, we're good on
LinkedIn. Now
LinkedIn.
it went live. Okay, now we're live. All right, cool. So sorry about that, guys. We don't know. It was Restream did some little weird quirky thing there right at the beginning of the live stream. But yeah, if you got a startup question, drop it down into the chat. We are here for your questions. We do have some submitted in advance. If you want a little bit more breathing room in terms of asking a question, then you can go to jdm.bio calendar button, hit the little form there to submit a question in advance. We've got, I think it was 4 questions today for us to get through, which is awesome, but we do prioritize the live ones because it's more fun. So if you've got one, go ahead and throw it down into the chat there. I think, Cameron, you warmed up the chat. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I was getting it going. I don't know that the fire has been set, but we're getting it a little warmer.
But Jeremy's telling us that we're live there, so that's good. But it is what it is.
Yeah, not tonight, Jeremy, but yeah, tonight is this is my last GEW event, and GEW being Global Entrepreneurship Week, so concluding here with a highlight for sure with office hours. So
yeah. It's a good way to end a long week, but you do have to use your brain for office hours, so maybe it's a mixed bag. But yeah, I don't know, maybe we've got some cool stuff that we can talk about a little bit, while we're waiting for questions to drop in, and before we get to our pre-submitted questions. So we did a live recording of our podcast on Wednesday at the Carlson Center as part of GEW. So we had a live audience and we just took questions there. So a little bit of a break from our usual podcast format, but much closer to this one. So if you're watching these and you want to get a little bit more, but from a group of people who were there in person, then you can check out the Traction Lab, also known as the Zero to Traction podcast. We're amid a rebrand from Zero to Traction to the Traction Lab podcast, but the Zero to Traction podcast. And it'll drop, if you're watching this live, it'll drop tomorrow, Saturday the 22nd. If you're watching this in the future, just go download the episode right now. Just go click it, boop, listen to the thing, and have a good time with that. So we got that. That was cool. We had AngelCon also happening earlier this week, which was super fun. You want to give a quick recap of the AngelCons?
Yeah, so just for quick context, we had a set of angels that have been trained to learn a little bit more about angel investing, and they all come together and deploy one check. And so we had 4 finalists make a $100K investment decision. So they chose a company called Intellivask, which basically has an insert into one of your arteries, and it helps detect if you have blood clotting when you're at home. So it has like a wand that signals where your blood clots, if they're forming or not. But we were excited to see one of our Traction Lab teams, Strive, led by Shweta. She walked away with one of the non-dilutive funding. So she walked away with $50K in non-dilutive funding, which is part of the Innovation Grant Program through the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. So awesome to see that. But really overall, just a great ecosystem event and celebrating, entrepreneurship, but also bringing people together to invest in one another, both through capital, but also the human capital component of it.
Yeah, awesome, awesome, awesome. It's pretty awesome event, super fun. That was good to have. That was one of the highlights, I think, for me from the week. So, kudos, Cameron, for like putting that together. Again, second year in a row, I think, for that, which is awesome. But
Mhm.
yeah. Cool. Well, with that, I mean, we could talk about GEW for a while because there was a lot of stuff that was happening here, but perhaps we can instead take some of the questions that we've got and process them aloud in real time for you. And if we do prioritize the live ones, so go ahead and throw one in the chat. If you got, I know it always takes a few minutes for everybody to join and kind of hop in, but we're gonna rock and roll. We're gonna rock and roll right now. We're gonna do this. Cameron, do you want to pick a number between 1 and 4, or should I load up the trusty die?
Let's do 3. That's the first one that comes to mind here.
3. All right, so this is a B2C mobile app for parents of kids in competitive youth sports. They said soccer, basketball, baseball, etc. They are at the unpaid pilot stage, and this is their question. They said, quick context. Oh, they're doing a wind up here. He's just going to take a step back and give us context. All right, the wind up. Team communication scheduling app for youth sports teams. Coaches and team parents love, that's in capital letters, love it during pilots. Way better than the GroupMe email chaos that they deal with. I don't know what GroupMe is, but I'm assuming it's a competitor. Here's the weird part, though. Parents will spend $200 on cleats without thinking twice, $500 on tournament fees. But when we mention $8.99 a month for the app, they're like, why can't this just be free? I don't get it. How is software the one thing sports parents won't pay for? They provide a little context in the other, like anything else box. 12 teams piloting, that's about 200 families. Coaches especially are enthusiastic, but parents are used to free apps like Team Snap's basic tier or just dealing with text chains. Maybe we need to charge the league club instead of individual teams.
Yeah, that last question was kind of where my mind was going, but I guess I think the first, signal, you move from they love it during pilots to then they're not willing to pay. So those are kind of go against each other in terms of if they really were loving it, they would be willing to pay you for it. And so I think there's maybe they love that it's free and they're getting free value, but at the end of the day, there's not this willingness to pay around it. And so what that signals, if you take that context and take a step back, is are you actually serving that urgent and severe pain point? And so I think you're asking the right question, that these seem more like users in terms of the parents. They're already doling out a lot of resources for the sport. And do they actually have the pain point of the scheduling, or is it actually the team trying to get all of these parents together and find who can actually come to the tournaments, et cetera? And so is it the coaches or the manager of the team who's actually experiencing a more urgent and severe pain point? Like, I think there's still discovery and validation that needs to be done there. But when I first saw B2C, I could see where that would be more challenging in terms of who actually has the pain point. And then I just think even the way you set it up as unpaid pilots, I could be wrong, but it kind of seems like an odd way for direct to consumer to do a pilot. I would say like that would be hard to control in general. Like, what's the span of that pilot and how is it defined? Right? It seems more like you just are calling free access a pilot, and so you're, I don't even know how you kind of offered it to them, but that would be kind of my first take. So, what about you, JDM?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Like at this point, it's a pilot because it sounds sexier than we just gave it to a bunch of people for free, hoping they'd like it. If I were to guess, it'd be something like, well, we have this, team that needs to use it for scheduling, and so we'll just give it to this team to try out for the season, and see if they like it. But I think for me, the word way in the question is doing a lot of heavy lifting, and I think this is where the brutal truth is going to come in here. So coaches and team parents love it during pilots, way better than GroupMe email chaos they deal with. So it's way better, but it's not $8.99 better. And I think that's the hard truth here, right? Is that it is better, but it is not better enough to warrant $9 a month. So that's just the hard truth. That's just the brutal truth of this, that they're not getting the value sufficient to warrant the $9 a month. They have to spend $500 in order to compete in the tournament. They have to spend $200 in order to get cleats, because you can't play without cleats, right? So they have to spend those things. They don't have to spend it on this. And what you're finding is that there's a switching cost with using the new tool, and it is not worth the $9 a month. Couple of things come to mind. So Cameron, I think your point is great about like do additional discovery and figure out, are we even targeting the right person? So check, definitely do that. Another thing is it might be framed suboptimally. So maybe the how you're charging is wrong. So you've assumed that this needs to be an $8.99 per month subscription, but maybe a monthly subscription is not the right mechanism for this. Maybe it's one time per season or an annual fee or something that brings it more in line with spending $200 on cleats, and now I'm going to spend $38 in order to get sophisticated scheduling or something like that. Would be another thing that you could very, very easily try. But this is the common danger that we see all the time with pilots, is that you do something for free and then nobody converts, and what you've done is optimized for a group of people that were never going to pay you in the first place, and that is unfortunate. So always start by charging something, and that actually leads to a question that Jeremy had in the chat, which was, what are our thoughts on paid pilots? I know that's kind of a general question there. We do have
strong thoughts is what
we have thoughts. Do you want to kick it off, Cameron? Or
no, I was just teeing you up for, you don't just have thoughts, you have strong thoughts.
Yes, my thoughts are robust, but full-bodied. My thoughts. So
full-bodied thoughts.
Full-bodied. Yes, I only have tequila in here. All right. So, yeah. So I think paid pilots are great. I'm personally, for the vast majority of cases, not a fan of free pilots at all, because most of the time a free pilot is actually a feasibility test and not a desirability test. And the one thing that I just posted this on LinkedIn, I think this morning, and on maybe on Blue Sky too, that pilots actually aren't about getting like users. Pilots aren't actually about testing. Pilots are they're not about testing whether people will use it. They're about testing whether people will commit to it. Like that's what it's really about, whether people will pay. And so if you can get some of that done up in advance, so in the form of like a paid pilot, then that kind of gets you a little bit down the road to determining that they would pay for it longer term. So if you're going to do a pilot and it's not a purely feasibility pilot that's necessary for a particular reason, and there are some edge cases, particularly in tough tech, where that can make sense. But outside of that, then short circuit that a little bit. Try to get some money up front as part of the pilot. But more importantly than even the money for it is that there is money set aside for when the pilot is up. So if you just say, hey, we're going to test this, and then they test it for 3 months, and at the end of it, you're like, so what'd you guys think? And they think it's great. And you're like, okay, let's talk about pricing. You kind of waited. You have to do sales twice. You did sales to get the pilot, and I have to do sales to convert it. But if instead, right up front, you said, hey, we know it's for 3 months. We say we're going to, increase the chaos. You're going to get far fewer complaints from parents about scheduling and far fewer no-shows, when you use this app in 3 months, we're going to reduce whatever by X%, whatever the metric is there. We're going to do that in 3 months. And if you do, then it's, we're going to convert, and the league's going to pay X dollars, per competitor per season or something like that, or whatever. And so like what you've done before you even enter the pilot is you have the what's next, you have the success criteria, everything logically flows. It's 3 months, it's this measurement. If we hit it, we convert to this, paid tier that looks like this. And so you already know that they're considering the money, and they're not going to do it if, for all intents and purposes, they're not going to do it if they weren't willing to entertain the possibility of paying that specific amount afterward. So that's the more important thing with the pilot, is defining that to get some measurement of intent. But if you can charge for a pilot, you should always charge for pilot. At least is mine. What are your thoughts on that, Cameron?
I don't have a ton more. I mean, I think the biggest the higher level questions is like the way in which you frame the pilot should be dictated by what you're trying to learn and what decision you need to make after the fact. And most of the pilots we see that are done probably out of sequence is they're trying to do a feasibility test versus one that's really testing around desirability and viability components of your business model. And oftentimes that's because it's easier to also close those pilots because you're not putting a price in front of it. And so they're feeling like they're paying you by doing the work of giving you feedback versus paying you by paying you. So
totes. Cool. And couldn't agree more, Shauna. Yes, a lot going on in the startup world lately. This is weird, and everybody always finds this super strange, and I find it super strange too. That September, October, November are like the busy season in entrepreneurship. Like for some reason, it's when everybody does everything, and it's particularly in Sacramento, but all kinds of other communities too. And you have Global Entrepreneurship Week, sure. I think part of it is like the moneyed folk come back from their summer vacations. And now they have time and they have money and they're like, well, let's get back into things. And so then that just starts kicking, a lot of events because the summer's really slow and we just don't see the same thing in the spring. So I think it's like a coming back from vacation thing. But anyway, yeah, super busy this time. Lots of awesome stuff, but it is about to die here. After today, basically, the ecosystem is going to largely shut down for like 2 months. But then we'll be back rocking and rolling in January with lots of cool stuff. So stay tuned to all the usual players for cool things coming up. All right. So awesome. Thanks for those questions. We do have a few more that were submitted in advance. Again, jdm.bio, calendar button, filled out a little form. Also in the chat, so we've dropped it there. So check that out. And you can get a little bit more space, a little bit more breathing room to ask a question than you can in the chat. But we do prioritize the live ones because you're here. And the people who submitted in advance can watch the recording, damn it. So with that, we did 3. So let's be crazy.
Go number 1.
And go number 1. That's right.
I was going to go odds first, and then we go to the evens,
All right. So this is a B2B SaaS for hairstylists that are renting chairs at salons. I'm actually a little bit minorly familiar with that space. Okay, cool. Their product is live, but they are pre-revenue. And the question is, I said, my co-founder and I built this client booking app specifically for chair renters, not salon owners. There's a difference. They put an exclamation on it. They really want us to know. We've got about 300 stylists using it, and they absolutely love it. They're on the app multiple times a day. Their clients like the booking experience, but nobody will pay, not even $15 a month. They all say the same thing. I already pay rent to the salon. I can't afford another expense. What do we do here? They said these stylists are hustlers. They work crazy hard, but their margins are tight. Salon rent is $200 to $500 a week, depending on the location. We thought $15 a month would be a no-brainer, but apparently not. Tried ads to make it free, but click-through rates are terrible. Well, yeah, because they're on the app to do the booking. They're not on the app to click an ad. I have thoughts here, but
I think the short answer I would say is like it sounds like the pricing that they're offering, and there's all the elements of do they actually have the problem that you think they have, but I wanted to like maybe kind of hone in on a component where it seems like they just pulled the pricing out of thin air in terms of like, oh, well, they pay a lot for rent, so therefore they're like, I think $15 makes sense, versus like a starting point is like, if you have done the work to identify the problem, like how are you quantifying that problem to them currently? Or how are they quantifying it? So is it like they're missing out on X number of people coming in? And so therefore, if you're streamlining their scheduling process, they get one more one more booking per day. And therefore, in a matter of a week, it actually pays for itself in terms of the overall app itself, right? But I don't know that quantification maybe has been shared in terms of how are they quantifying the problem. And if it's just like, oh, it saves us 15 minutes a day, that might not be worth the money to them to then have to change process. And so Josh is, I think, wrote a pretty awesome article, or maybe it was our last one of our podcasts on the switching cost component of it. So I think the episode was around 10x. And so it was like switching costs of how they're currently doing business to then have this be a paid feature, isn't maybe something that they're willing to do if their quantified leap for them isn't there.
Couldn't agree more. I'll also add, like we were talking about with the other one, that the mechanism that we're charging might also be wrong. So one of the competitors in this space is Square. and they have a booking thing that like for example, I have a hairstylist. She rents a chair at a place and she uses Square, and so I book through Square. I don't know if they charge her a monthly fee or not, but I do know that Square takes a percentage of the transaction. So that might be something, for example, that you can do to cover cost in something like this, is you actually get a percent of transaction, and the additional feature of the scheduling is an added way to get some stickiness, because you can then you book the appointments in advance. You can automatically charge no shows, right? There's a lot of those other things that you can just sort of get in there that really do affect the bottom line too. And as long as you can stay part of that transaction, then you have just like a constant part of revenue coming in there. And that frankly is probably worth more than the $15 anyway. Yeah, so I would take a look at the mechanism, like the how you're charging. In addition to that, I think that is something that's relevant and cool and interesting as well. I don't really have. I think Cameron, you covered everything else, so that's and I think the switching cost was an episode of Zero to Traction.
The Traction Lab podcast.
Well, at the time, it was called Zero to Traction. And we'll see if I
formerly known as
everything changed by tomorrow when the episode drops.
Formerly known as ZTT.
Yes, the artist formerly known as ZTT.
All right.
Cool. Now we'll just go in order. Question 2, and again, if you got one live, drop into the chat. We'll always prioritize the live ones. Otherwise, you submit a calendar button, submit one in advance, and you get a little bit more breathing room. Okay, this is a B2B SaaS for procurement managers at hospitals buying medical supplies. I don't think I've had this one yet. This is cool. They're at the idea stage or pre-product. They said, we've done 35 interviews with hospital procurement people. The pain is real. They're using legacy systems from the 90s. Ouch. Everything's manual. They can't track pricing across vendors, etc. But when I ask if they have budget for new software, they all say their IT department controls that and won't approve anything unless it integrates with Epic or Cerner. We're 2 engineers who've never done healthcare IT. Should we even pursue this, or is the integration requirement a deal breaker?
I'll maybe start off real quick and then kick it to you. And I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record from the last example, but I just want to read what they submitted as the pain here. So the pain is real, that they're using legacy systems from the 90s. Everything's manual, and they can't track pricing across vendors. And so okay, those are I guess, challenges with the features, but what I think is often missed in articulation of the pain point, again, is how are they quantifying that pain? Are they losing a bunch of time, and how much time? Or what is the cost of doing business because of the legacy system? So it's not that the problem isn't just because it's old tech. It's that is the tech not allowing them to do something, and how are you quantifying that particular gap for them? And so that lack of ability to track pricing across vendors, are they losing out on deals and spending more money than they should be? And how much are they overspending, right? And so the more you can articulate that, then it'll be easier to identify why they would ultimately switch from the current process that they're doing to what you're going to be offering, and then seeing if there's actually a need for integration. But I think you're hopping into feasibility questions, which are in this case definitely a big hurdle. But if the pain point's big enough, then I would imagine there's a will and a way to figure that out. But that's all I got, JDM. I'll kick it to you.
I think where my head went with this is I'm wondering if it's an excuse. This idea of IT controls the budget, and they don't approve anything unless it's integrates with Epic. That sounds like something that a business leader might say to indicate they're not spending their own money on this, and they want to kind of close the door on the conversation with IT. That's what comes to mind for me. I'm not saying that that's the case here, but it's very, very common to see these kind of redirecting, avoiding kind of evasive answers to things. So they just redirect it because then it avoids the conflict. Oh, I love you. IT's not going to love you, but I love you. But those bastards in IT, but I love you. It allows them to do that without, so that it lowers all of the social burden, social risk, and social pressure that they might have or something like that. So that's what comes to mind for me, and I would want to explore that a bit more. And this is where we have at Traction Lab, we have something we call the 4 asks. And so the 4 asks framework is like when you want to know, even if you're at a stage like the idea pre-product stage, doing something as complicated as trying to sell to procurement in a hospital, right? That you can still engage in one of these asks to determine if the other side, if the other party, if the customer is willing to invest a little bit in the solution. Is it interesting enough at all for them to do anything other than talk to you for a minute? And so we got the 4 asks. It's 4 questions. It's spelled out team, TEAM. And those 4 questions are like, what are they going to give you access to? So they could give you access to money. That's obviously, straightforward. That if they like you, they'll give you access to money. Wahoo! If they don't love you enough for that, then you can maybe get access to people. Right. So and this is where the IT one comes into play. So like if they say like, oh, this is, a blah, blah, blah conversation with IT, will they actually connect you to the people in their in the department that maybe control that? Will they actually connect you with IT? Are they willing to spend that social capital, what we call access? So that's the access part of this, right? I don't know why I'm going in reverse order on team, but
just to confuse everybody. So the acronym. Yeah. So then you're going, is it mate or mate?
The other one is effort. Like, can you get them to do something? So if you were working with IT, will they give you access to something, a system? They give you data dumps or something like that. Obviously not of something maybe out of Epic, but will they give you something that has to do with procurement data in the past that you would process or whatever, and show them how it would be different in your world. And then lastly is time, right? Can you get them to commit more time, either directly to you in the form of conversation or time in the form of them doing something offline to get back to you on something, right? So those are 4 different asks that you can make of somebody. Ask for time, ask for effort, ask for access, or ask for money. And if you want to know, are they really in or are they really out, then make an ask of them that they have to actually engage with, and that's going to be a signal of intent. So that's where I would take this. It'd be like, is it truly this, like, well, IT won't do it unless it integrates with Epic? Well, that's not necessarily a deal breaker here, right? Because you could integrate with Epic, and if you can get a commitment from a hospital that an LOI, like that's not too big of a lift. So like, let's keep going here, but let's make sure that that's the reason by actually asking for something, time, effort, access, money from these procurement managers, and see if they'll give it to us. And the first thing might be like, hey, can we have a conversation with you and the relevant party from IT, and we can have a conversation about what it would look like for something like this to get approved.
Boom.
Cool. All right. That leaves question 4, lonely question 4. I think we're coming up on Thanksgiving week. You guys are a little slow in the chat, but if you've got a question, go ahead.
Did they already eat their turkey? They already eat their turkey?
It seems like they may have eaten the turkey, little tryptophans, like taking its effect there. That's all right. We still love you guys. It's fine. It's still cool. You submitted questions in advance, and we're appreciative of that. So thanks for doing that. Cameron, I talked for a bit on that one. You want to set up the next one?
You got it. So this is a B2B SaaS startup here. They're targeting chiropractors in solo or small group practices in terms of where they're at in terms of stage. They're revenue generating. So they're at 310K ARR. They're working with 140 practices. They have a solid product. Well, hopefully the customers are saying that, which is key. But the issue or challenge they're working through is chiropractors operate in this weird space where some insurance covers them and some do not. Some are wellness focused and don't take insurance at all, where some do PI cases with attorneys. So is that personal injury cases with attorneys. Our software has to handle 4 completely different business models, and the feature requests are all over the map. We can't be everything to everyone, but we also can't afford to niche down and cut our TAM by 75%. Thoughts? And then somebody.
I was like, where's the question? The question is thoughts.
Well,
As
I
much
guess
as
some additional
transparency.
context for all of us here was, in terms of cash practices, they want simple scheduling and payment processing. Insurance practices need billing codes and claims. Personal injury practices need case management and attorney communications. They are all chiropractors, but they run completely different businesses. So, Josh, what are your thoughts?
Thoughts? um, a couple things. So you're right. You can't be everything to everybody. And so my thought is you've identified 4 different customers. And that's just is what it is. Don't try to sell to all of them, at least not anywhere in the near term. And the I think a way to look at this is like, and I'm gonna apologize in advance for introducing some of my bias into this. Like this is where when you get to something that is as lightly regulated as chiropractic is, that you're going to end up with this like conglomeration of different kinds of practices. And so you don't have that if you take like the core of chiropractic for which if you take the piece of chiropractic for which there's any scientific evidence at all, then it is that for which a physical therapist would do the same thing, but under tighter regulation and always covered by insurance. And those practices are going to look the same, whereas that's just one of these like narrow bands, whereas a lot of the chiropractic practice that's outside of that is much more, again, I'm introducing my bias here, but is much more woo-woo, and that's going to lead to a completely different non-medical business model, which you're hinting at here with like the wellness focused ones. And so that is a completely different thing. And so that like, because you're like the thing that connects them together is this chiropractic, but that's actually an issue because it's not as connecting together as a tightly regulated practice would be, like if we were targeting physical therapy providers or something like that, right? That's gonna be much more binding, even though there's gonna be diversity. It's gonna be much more binding than something like chiropractors are going to be. They're just gonna be really, really different. And so you have to further segment the market to figure out, like, if we're targeting like somebody in the chiropractic space, what is the core problem that we're actually solving for them? And so, like you say, our software, and you didn't really say other than like cash practices want this and PI practices need that. It's not actually clear to me what your core value proposition is. And so I would say if you have a core value proposition, then for which of these groups is that pain that you're solving felt most acutely, like that's the most severe and urgent pain, and then I would target them, and then the rest of it you could always expand into later. But for now, you can focus on the one that's going to be easiest to convert because they experience the pain with sufficient severity and urgency. So those are my thoughts on that. I'll kick it back to you, Cameron.
Yeah, I think the like part right before they say thoughts, they're worried about like this TAM. So like being able to like, I guess, demonstrate that there's a large enough market. And I think you have a variety of customers that demonstrate that there is a potential large market. And there's nothing wrong with niching down to say, here's how I'm entering the market. And that's why you have your TAM, SAM, SOM of like, what are you going to obtain now? It's the most efficient path to market and getting paying customers, and then you can grow into the larger set of market. So I don't necessarily, I guess I'd have to fully understand why you think you're cutting your TAM by 75% when they're still in the realm of possibility. They're just not your paying customers now because there is maybe not their urgency and severity related to it. So that would be kind of my initial thinking there. But I would probably echo all the similar thoughts that you had shared, Josh.
Cool.
Well,
that, as they say, is that. So 4 nice, robust questions, in addition to the many that we got during our live recording of the podcast.
Maybe that's why it's a little lackluster here in the chat. We sufficiently answered all the questions live. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, there have been
some good questions.
It actually does make sense because like the whole point of the Traction Lab, right, is to go from a world of high uncertainty to high conviction. And I think what we're finding is we're just so good at it. We're just removing all of the uncertainty and there's no more questions left. Like we've just done that work. So go us, obviously, I think is the takeaway.
I like it.
Yeah, fills up. We mentioned that
We sufficiently filibuster. We're the best at it. We did get a question here. Dang it. Who's the MC? Who's the MC? We got two masters of ceremony here. All right, I'll read it aloud and maybe you take the first stab since I'm not very good at reading and taking it in. So what questions am I not asking yet that a founder of a movement-based, non-VC backed project like mine should be asking in these early stages, especially if leading with emotional resonance, storytelling, long-term vision over urgency or FOMO?
Well, I'm not sure how to answer what questions you're not asking yet, but I do want to acknowledge this, that coming up with the right question to ask is actually the hard part. Once you know what the right question to ask is, actually answering it is usually pretty straightforward. Like David Bland wrote this great book called Testing Business Ideas. I was looking for it. I do have it on my shelf here. It's a little far to me while I'm talking. That has like 45 different experiments that he's cataloged together and appropriately categorized and everything else to be like, okay, well, here's how you can test it. So once you know a question that you're asking, you can kind of pull experiments basically off the shelf, whether from David's book or from something else. And so like that's where the easy part, like even this has been recognized for a long time. Like Albert Einstein once quipped, and I'm going to more paraphrase it than anything else, but he said, if I had an hour to solve the world's most difficult problem and my life depended on finding a solution, I'd spend the first 55 minutes figuring out what the right question was, because once I did, answering it would be easy, right? So like this, it's a long-standing thing that a lot of the solution is solved, quote unquote, by the framing of the question and by actually asking the right thing. So I like the question that you're asking because you're pointing at the right thing. And I also want to acknowledge that like the work of finding what the right question is also the hard part. So validation all the way down for that. So I'm not entirely sure, to be specific with what you followed on with what we mean by leading with emotional resonance and storytelling and long-term vision over urgency or FOMO. If you're saying that like, oh, we don't have those things and we're over this long-term vision, then that's where we might be looking at this like, we have this vitamin versus painkiller metaphor in the startup world that's really common, where we say you want to be a painkiller and not a vitamin. So like the difference between the vitamin may prevent you from getting sick in the metaphor. Vitamins will prevent you from getting sick, but a painkiller like solves your pain right now. And it's way easier to sell a painkiller than it is to sell a vitamin. And so the idea there is that like the more that you try to push something off into the future, like we help prevent X. If they haven't experienced X yet, most people will not choose to overcome the switching costs in order to like go for that long-term vision. So that can actually be a really big challenge in a startup. And so then the question is like, how can we like shift and reframe that, right, to something that is more immediate? And that might be something that you find in the emotional resonance, because that doesn't have to be future focused. If it's something that they're missing, then you do want to like climb the early adopter pyramid and say that like there's a group of people out there who aren't experiencing this positive emotion that they want, but there's only a subset of them that are actually really aware of that gap, that hole in their heart, for lack of a better phrase there. And so you want to find that group of people, and then you have this adoption curve, right, which is been around for a long time, and the graphic version of it was made famous by Jeffrey Moore's book Crossing the Chasm. And it's that you have the early adopters all the way at the beginning, a little tiny part of the curve, and then you go after that you have the early majority and the late majority, and then you have the I forget what the penultimate one is, and then you have the laggards all the way at the end, right? So you have like
late majority,
like, the late I thought early majority, late majority. Anyway, so yeah, the laggards. Okay, maybe I wasn't missing one at all. All right, so so you have that diffusion of innovation curve, and what it is like over time, who is adopting in the market, and that really like the early adopter segment is only usually about 16% of the market. And the rest of it, the other 84% of the market, comes much later. And so like this is what like connecting it back to the other questions, like sometimes you have to niche down in order to even get into the market, because 84% ain't going to be interested. So if you like go back to the idea of emotional resonance, is there 16% of the market that we can find for whom that is a more immediate problem for them, that they understand that they have this hole that you can fill with whatever emotion and experience that you're creating out of your business, and that later on, through the process of that coming to market, we can use those early adopters to prime the market to be ready for us later on, right? So there was a very small number of people in 2009 who knew that they needed an iPhone, or 2007, I think it was 2007, who needed an iPhone, right? There's a very small number of people. It was that 16% who actually knew that they needed one. It was some of us who are already using smartphones, and so of a different variety. iPhone was not the first smartphone, right? They made a lot of innovations, but they were not the first smartphone. And so there was a small percentage of us who had already adopted that, and that was their early target. Now they're ubiquitous, but the 84% of the people at the time was like, "Why do I need this? I don't need this. Like, what am I going to do with this thing?" And so you have to like look at that from that perspective too. It's like, how do I attack that really early segment, the 16% who can't live another day without my solution? And then you can use that as a wedge into the broader market. But then it's not changing vitamin versus painkiller. It's finding which 84% is this a vitamin. Let's set them aside, and then let me find the 16% for whom this is actually a painkiller right now. Not preventing cancer, it's curing cancer, right?
I think the only thing I would add in there is thinking about when is the like triggering event for this emotional like resonance or this thing to take place. So like even if it's not something that is as much of a painkiller versus like a vitamin, like at least what point do they become, actively aware that they need this thing? So even if it's something that you're more pulling on what we call like a social emotional job versus a functional job, like what is the trigger an event to make them aware that they need this thing, because that then became more of an urgent need to them for them to solve this particular problem, whatever that might be. And so thinking about like, is there a common thing where this happens in someone's life and then therefore they're looking for some sort of solution, that then ultimately like you're the thing that they're looking for to help them get to this future state.
100%. Oh, I got another one coming in.
Oh, you want me to?
Oh, we can't.
All right. So thanks, Anthony here. So hi, Cameron and JDM. I'll fill in I think you missed the end there. So JDM, I am recent grad from Sac State, now working at a Big Four consulting firm, and I'm very interested in starting my own startup. If you have any guidance on how to manage a full-time job and working on a startup on the side, I would greatly appreciate it. Thanks. So I think the first thing that comes to mind is, one, awesome. Excited to hear you, graduate, work for a Big Four. That's huge. And then now wanting to launch a startup. I think the first thing from a technical standpoint is don't use your Big Four consulting equipment, because likely when you signed your employment, they would own the rights to what you create. So that would be a small step in the process as you go to build things. I think secondly, again, then is like in terms of managing time, I'm not going to put it as much in terms of like, how do you like break in your time, but how do you start to eliminate or not eliminate, but start to de-risk or move from this place of uncertainty into more clarity. And so we use this jargony way of saying proportion your effort to the evidence that you have. And what we mean is as you start to gain clarity on the startup based on true evidence from the marketplace, that being your customers are giving you intent versus interest, and you're actually having something more tangible to grab a hold of in terms of the desirability and demand for what you're creating, then that would say it warrants more and more time. And the overall way we frame it is like you're the first investor in your startup. So like based on what you know from the market, like right now you're saying it doesn't warrant X amount of time for me to spend on this. And that's totally great and okay. But at what point do you double down your time? Like you only know based on what you need to know from the marketplace to make that leap in terms of time going forward. So those would be my high level thoughts, both, tactically of like things not to do, but also then maybe the framing as you're going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. You took the things that I would have said first as well. So glad to see we're on the same page there.
It's like the first time.
Also, make sure you check your employment agreement and make sure that they're not restricting any side hustles, and you just do some due diligence on those kinds of things as well, because you don't want any IP assignment going back to your company. The other thing I'll say is you're going to have to set down so Cameron said not to use your equipment. your big four equipment for, for technical like IP assignment reasons. But also you're obviously going to set down your big four equipment for a lot of this, because it's a different way of thinking about things. And so you're going to want to think in a manner that is more conducive to the de-risking that Cameron is talking about. So you're going to think in terms of small incremental steps that are entirely evidence-based, that are based on learning exactly what I need to learn in order to do next. And so we have this like framework that we talk about for the traction lab that we call like the four rights. And the idea of the four rights, and it's kind of this jargony thing, to do it that doesn't sound like we're really saying much at all. But the idea behind this is that you want to be doing the right things at the right time in the right way for the right investment, right? So like that's kind of the core of that. And the way that it kind of translates to, if you want to like break that down a little bit more into that, is that we want to like make sure that we're like really tightly focused. So like doing the right things is that we're focused on what actually matters right now. Right. So like we want to, and that's going to be, if you're just starting out with an idea, then that's going to be desirability. Do people even have the problem that we think that they do? Right. That's going to be that. But later on, it's going to be something else. And so you want the highest leverage, high impact, best thing that you can do right now in this moment. So that's doing the right thing. That's the focus aspect. And the second is at the right time, right? That we want to have the right priorities. And so not everything is created equal. And there's just like a whole procrastivity thing that goes into that as well. And so what's going to make the biggest difference today as opposed to next week? And that's just a constant reprioritization of things. So are we focusing on the right priority? And then third is like in the right way, is that like we want to be, going through the process of that systematic de-risking of that, of engaging in the scientific method, right? So that's just adding the methodology in there, that our intent is to gather evidence, which means de-risking. And de-risking is kind of the more jargony term for it, but all we're doing is gathering evidence, right? Trying to prove ourselves wrong through science. And then lastly, for the right investment, we mean this for lowest cost. We don't want to have to bet more than we have to. That's the proportioning your effort to the evidence kind of thing. So doing the right things in the right time, in the right way, for the right investment, right? Like, so we're focusing on the right priority to gather evidence for the lowest cost is kind of what we want to always be doing. It's just that iterative process until there's no more risk to de-risk, at which time we found product market fit and we're scaling and everything's great. So, and then no longer a startup, according to Steve Blank. So then, well done. So I would just put the mindset shift around that, and then the technical things that Cameron said. And then also, I guess I'll just validate that this is just how people do it. It's not right to commit to quit your job and, go full time on a startup without any evidence. That's not for the lowest cost, let's just say. So I think the way that you're approaching it is expected and right and normal and awesome. And so, kudos on that. Just, think small, think lean, get evidence, just ruthlessly focus on evidence, kill your darlings, as the evidence warrants, and, onwards and upwards, and keep coming back so we can, keep helping you along in your journey.
Boom.
So, we'll do one last filibuster in case there's questions here, but we'll make it relevant to you. So I mentioned that like it's been a really busy time in entrepreneurship, but things are about to slow down a little bit. Everything just kind of over the last 6 weeks or so of the year, and then of course everything will ramp back up in January. So in between now and then, what are you gonna do? Whatever are you going to do? Well, Cameron and I got something for you that we're excited to be launching in the next week or two, which is our high conviction startup course. It's the high conviction startup course. It's a completely free email based course that walks you through the process of how you go from a world that you're currently operating in, the normal startup world of high uncertainty, to that world of high conviction. If you were here earlier in the live stream, then of what I speak there. But getting to that high conviction point, that's really what we're trying to do. And so this will walk you through that process that we just mentioned of how do you know that you're focusing on the right things and the right priority to gather evidence for the lowest cost. And so we are going to put a link in the into the comments we'll do it after the live stream ends, but we'll drop one in there. It'll be in the YouTube description as well. So go ahead and check those out. You can sign up with your email address, and you'll get notified when that goes live in the next week or two. Again, it's completely free. We'll give you some tools, techniques, tips, everything else to kind of go onwards and upwards in your process of gathering evidence. Anything you wanted to add to that, Cameron?
No, we look forward to seeing who signs up and wants to build a high conviction startup.
Yeah, we got a good wait list going on it already, so I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
And I'd love to get you guys in on the action. And those emails come from us. If you have questions, you can actually just reply to them. So, and in fact, on some of them,
I mean, if we respond is another question, but
it's all connected.
and just kidding. So we got,
all right.
I think this is our last question here. So thanks again for an additional question. So you want to share pieces publicly to build traction or test resonance, but I've been holding back because I'm unsure when or how to protect the brand IP. How should early founders think about copyright and trademark timing without slowing momentum? Go ahead, JD. You always have a solid answer, and I know it's just like usually, can you fight it anyways? Is usually the big thing.
This is Cameron trying to push me into the one giving legal advice as not a lawyer.
I'm not an attorney. My last name's Law, but I by no means.
The answer.
You see, you're a JD though. You're
Oh damn! We're both in this world. This is crazy.
Is that why you go by JDM, not JD?
That's right. So I don't get mistaken for a law. Okay, but no. In all seriousness, definitely not legal advice. So don't misinterpret as such. And if you have any specific concerns, I do highly recommend talking to a lawyer who has an expertise in intellectual property protection. Can recommend some awesome guys in the Sacramento area if you want to talk to somebody. But to this more specifically. So from my perspective, based on my experience, and again, this is in no way legal advice. For the vast majority of businesses that don't have some uber secret sauce that's really needing to be protected, then there is no point in time. The point in time is day one or day zero to be putting it in front of people, because the only way, sunlight is the best disinfectant kind of thing, right? The more eyeballs we get on something, the better this is going to turn out to be. So I don't think that the idea of idea theft happening, it's incredibly rare. And what you're actually banking on is that somebody else thought your idea was so good that they are going to execute it on it with such passion and conviction that they are going to outperform you on this thing that is your singular passion. And I think if that's the case, all due respect, they deserve to win, right? You did not deserve to win because you didn't chase it with that. The rest of that of can they execute better because they have some unfair advantage like access to money and so forth, those ones you don't have to worry about as much, because large companies don't like to risk it. They don't like to risk these cockamamie schemes, the vast majority of which don't work. They would much rather, and it's much cheaper for them, for the people with money, or the companies with money, to let you try it, prove it works, and then just buy you. That is much their preferred path. So if you're just worried about somebody with more money executing on this, just with greater resources, that tends to happen even less because they're more risk averse. So that's an advantage to you. It's it's the admiral versus pirate, or pirate versus navy kind of metaphor that goes into that. The last thing that Cameron alluded to that I always talk about here is that let's assume, for the sake of argument, that somebody out there saw your idea, thought it was amazing. You had perfect, you had everything trademarked and you had patents and everything was great. And you go out to market and somebody just shamelessly rips you off, completely violates your intellectual property and rips you off. You're not going to like the next part of it, or most founders don't like the next part of it. The next part is so what? You can't do anything about it. And I know that seems weird, but if they're going to just rip you off because they have no morals or standards anyway, then the patent's not going to stop them, because they're usually really easy to get around. So they can probably get around the patent anyway, unless you have a large patent portfolio that's protecting the space. Or second, they're going to be able to outmaneuver you when it comes to court. You can't afford to litigate the patent itself, which is going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and no investor is gonna go anywhere near a company that's trying to litigate a patent already. That's just stacking risk upon risk upon risk upon risk. And you cannot get attorneys to take patent cases on contingency because there's no money at the end of it. So you literally you have this patent that's completely indefensible anyway, because you can't afford to litigate it, and they can probably get around it without any need for litigation to begin with. So for all of those reasons, I would say, and again, this is not legal advice, I would say don't really worry. about copyright and trademark and infringement, or worry too much about any other type of intellectual property rights, absent some really specific cases. And you like those specific cases are usually covering a secret sauce that you have no business exploring, exposing the world to anyway. So keep your secret sauce secret, because you don't need the secret sauce to be public. That's not what people are paying for. The secret sauce is just the how. It's not the what. Anything you want to add to that? Did I cover all the things there, Cameron?
Covered all the bases. That was a home run.
Sue Cameron, not me.
Who is Sue Cameron? I don't know that person. Okay. Well, with that, I think we're right on time. So thanks everyone for the questions. Thank you everyone for plugging into Global Entrepreneurship Week. Thank you for being an entrepreneur and taking the risk to build something great and solving people's problems. Know JDM and I are in your corner. The Traction Lab is here to help you go from that place of uncertainty to high conviction, and help you ultimately move your business forward and taking that scientific approach to gathering evidence to help you gain that clarity that you're looking for.
All right. And with that, we shall bid you adieu, and we shall sign off as we always do. Are you controlling the button or am I controlling the button?
I'll do it.
Okay.
With that, bye.